Hello and welcome. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this quiet moment together to step away from the rush of the day, to loosen your shoulders, soften your breath, and gently enter a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll be telling you a calming bedtime story called The Cat Who Lived 1,000 Lives. It's a gentle tale about a troubled young man and a mysterious cat who has walked through countless lifetimes, returning again and again to guide one soul toward a destiny long unfolding. A story about memory, quiet guidance, and the peace that comes when the right moment finally arrives. But before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it as you settle in to rest? And if there are certain kinds of stories you enjoy most, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your words and ideas help shape this space and inspire future stories. If you've been enjoying these bedtime tales, subscribing is a simple and free way to support the channel, and it truly means more than you know. Now, let's begin to slow things down even more. Allow your breathing to become steady and unforced. With each gentle exhale, let the weight of the day drift a little farther away. Let your thoughts soften, like clouds moving slowly across a quiet night sky. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just listen, rest, and follow the sound of this story as it unfolds, one calm moment at a time. Our story begins on a quiet night. The night arrived softly, wrapped in rain and quiet. The city outside Elias's window seemed to hold its breath. Streetlights blurred into gentle halos as water traced slow paths down the glass. Inside his small apartment, the air felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. Elias sat on the edge of his bed, shoulders slightly hunched, listening to the steady rhythm of the storm, as if it might explain something he had been unable to name. Sleep had been distant for many nights now. Whenever he closed his eyes, his mind wandered through memories that felt unfinished, moments that carried weight without clear reason. He often felt as though he had missed something important, not recently, but long ago. Tonight was no different. He rubbed his tired eyes, exhaled slowly, and turned his gaze toward the window. That was when he noticed the cat. At first, Elias thought exhaustion was playing tricks on him. Perched calmly on the narrow windowsill, just beyond the glass, sat a silver-grey cat, perfectly still despite the rain. Water beaded along the sill, yet the cat remained dry, fur smooth and faintly luminous under the moonlight. His posture was relaxed, elegant, as though storms were nothing more than passing thoughts. The cat's eyes were what held Elias in place. They shone with a soft silver-blue light, calm and observant, not startled or curious, but knowing. The cat did not blink or move away. He simply watched Elias, as if this meeting had been arranged long before the night began. Slowly, almost without realizing it, Elias stood and crossed the room. The floor felt cool beneath his feet. With a gentle motion, he unlatched the window and pushed it open. Rain-scented air drifted inside, fresh and clean. The cat stepped forward soundlessly, entering the room as though he belonged there. For a moment, neither of them moved. Elias felt something loosen in his chest, a quiet easing he had not felt in a long time. The cat padded across the floor and settled near the bed, curling his tail neatly around himself. He looked up once more, eyes steady and calm, and then closed them as if satisfied. No fear stirred in Elias, no surprise sharp enough to break the moment. Instead, a strange familiarity settled over him, warm and reassuring. He sat back down, listening to the rain. The room now somehow fuller, softer, as though something long absent had finally returned. That night, for the first time in weeks, Elias lay down and drifted into sleep with ease. And beside him, the silver-grey cat remained, breathing quietly, keeping watch, as he had done many times before. Morning arrived gently, filtered through pale clouds, and the lingering hush left behind by the rain. Elias woke more rested than he had in weeks. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the city, half expecting the calm to fade as it usually did. Then he noticed the weight at the foot of his bed. The silver-grey cat was there. He sat neatly with his tail wrapped around his paws, eyes half-lidded, watching Elias as though he had never left. There was no urgency in his gaze, no demand for attention. He simply was. Elias let out a slow breath, something between a laugh and a sigh, and swung his legs over the side of the bed. "Morning," he murmured, surprised by how natural it felt to speak. The cat blinked once in response. As Elias moved through his small apartment, the cat followed at a quiet distance. When Elias reached for a chipped mug in the cupboard, it slipped from his fingers. Before it could fall, the cat let out a sharp, sudden sound. Elias startled, tightened his grip, and the mug remained safely in his hand. He glanced down at the cat, who now sat calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. Small moments like that filled the morning. When Elias stepped outside, the city felt different, softer, less demanding. The cat walked beside him, close enough that Elias could feel a gentle warmth near his ankle. Pedestrians passed without noticing the cat at all, their attention fixed on phones and schedules. Elias wondered, briefly, if he was the only one who could see him. At a busy crossing, Elias took a step forward, just as a bicycle sped past, far closer than expected. The cat moved first, brushing firmly against Elias's leg, halting him in place. The rush of air passed harmlessly by. Elias's heart raced, but the cat had already resumed his steady pace, untroubled. By the time Elias reached the cafe near his apartment, a quiet realization settled in. The cat seemed to know what was about to happen before it did. Not in a dramatic way, not with warnings or signs, but with a gentle certainty that guided Elias away from harm and toward calm. They sat together by the window, the cat perched on the seat across from him, watching the street with patient eyes. Elias wrapped his hands around his coffee and felt a sense of ease settle deeper into his body. He did not ask where the cat had come from or why he had appeared. Some truths, Elias sensed, were not meant to be rushed. For now, it was enough to know that he was no longer walking alone, and that this quiet presence beside him seemed to understand his world better than he did himself. Sleep came quickly that night, as if Elias had been waiting for it all along. The world softened the moment his eyes closed, and the steady rhythm of his breathing carried him somewhere deeper than ordinary dreams. He felt no jolt, no sudden shift. Instead, it was as though he simply stepped through a quiet doorway. He found himself standing beneath a wide, unfamiliar sky. The air smelled of salt and old wood. Before him stretched a harbor lit by torches, ships rocking gently against stone docks, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The water reflected firelight in trembling lines. Elias knew, without knowing how, that he had never been here in this life. And yet, nothing felt strange. At his side sat the silver-grey cat. The cat looked exactly as he always did, calm, luminous, unchanged by the age around them. He watched the harbor with quiet focus, as if remembering something Elias could not quite reach. When Elias took a step forward, the cat moved with him, matching his pace as though they had walked these docks together many times before. The scene shifted without warning. Now Elias stood in a vast hall filled with towering shelves of books. A great library surrounded him, its ceiling lost in shadow. Candles flickered between rows of knowledge, their flames bending as if time itself were breathing. He could hear distant murmurs, voices layered upon one another, too many to understand. Then came the crackle of fire. Flames climbed the shelves, but the air remained strangely still. Books burned without collapsing, pages glowing yet unread. Elias felt a deep ache in his chest, a grief that did not belong to this moment alone. The cat jumped lightly onto a table, silver eyes reflecting the fire, unafraid. "You've been here before," Elias whispered, though he did not know why he said it. The cat met his gaze, and something passed between them. Recognition, steady and unspoken. The dream continued, unfolding like a long memory rather than a story. Elias glimpsed other moments. A quiet forest path beneath falling snow, a stone road winding through a desert city, a small room lit by dawn, where a younger version of himself sat alone, staring at his hands with the same distant expression he wore now. In every place, in every time, the cat was there, always watching, always waiting. When Elias finally stirred awake, the early light of morning filled his room. His heart was calm, but his mind felt full, as though something ancient had brushed against it and moved on. The cat lay curled beside him, breathing slow and even, exactly where he had fallen asleep. Elias stared at the ceiling, the dream lingering like a soft echo. He could not explain what he had seen, only that it felt important, real, in a way waking life rarely did. Beside him, the cat opened one silver blue eye, calm and knowing, as if to say that some memories do not belong to just one lifetime, and that in time, Elias would remember more. The following afternoon unfolded slowly, as though the world itself had decided not to rush. Elias wandered without a clear destination, the silver-grey cat padding beside him with quiet certainty. They turned corners. Elias didn't remember choosing. Past streets he rarely noticed, until they arrived at a narrow storefront, tucked between taller buildings. The sign above the door was faded, its lettering worn smooth by time. Inside, warm light glowed softly, and the air carried the scent of old paper and dust. Elias hesitated only a moment before stepping in. The bell above the door chimed gently. The cat slipped inside ahead of him, already at ease. Rows of books filled the space from floor to ceiling, their spines mismatched and well-loved. Some looked ancient, others merely forgotten. Elias felt a strange pull in his chest, the same quiet ache he'd felt in his dreams. The cat moved with purpose, weaving between shelves until he stopped near the back of the shop. There, half hidden behind a row of history volumes, sat a small wooden table. Resting on it was a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and darkened with age. Elias approached slowly. No one else seemed to be watching. In fact, he realized there was no one else in the shop at all. He opened the journal. The handwriting inside was careful, deliberate, written by many hands across many years. Elias read fragments at first, mentions of a guardian, a watcher who returned again and again, living countless lives for the sake of one soul. As he turned the pages, the words began to feel less like a story and more like a record of him. His breath caught as he read passages describing a man who carried the same restlessness, the same sense of unfinished purpose. A man who lived, failed to choose, and returned to try again, always guided by the same presence, always accompanied by a cat who did not age, who did not forget. Elias looked down. The silver-grey cat sat at his feet, gazing up at him, eyes calm and steady. "You've been waiting," Elias said softly. The cat did not move, but something in his stillness felt like agreement. Elias closed the journal, his hands trembling slightly. The weight he had carried for so long finally began to take shape. He was not broken. He was unfinished. and the reason he had always felt watched over, nudged away from harm, guided toward moments of quiet clarity. It had all been real. When Elias placed the journal back on the table and turned toward the door, the shop felt unchanged, peaceful and ordinary. But he was not the same. As he stepped outside, the city seemed sharper, clearer, as if he was seeing it for the first time. The cat walked beside him once more. Elias did not ask what came next. For the first time, he trusted that the answer would come when it was meant to. That evening, the quiet returned. Elias sat on the floor of his apartment, his back resting against the couch. The lights dimmed low. The city hummed beyond the walls, distant and muffled, as though it belonged to another life entirely. The journal lay closed on the table nearby. Its presence felt even without being touched. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to feel the weight he had carried for so long. It was not a single memory or moment of failure, but a deep, steady fear, an unshaped dread that he would reach the end of his life having missed something essential, that he would once again arrive at the edge of a choice and turn away, unable to name why. The thought had followed him since childhood, shadowing every decision, every quiet moment of hesitation. The silver-grey cat crossed the room and curled beside him, close enough that Elias could feel the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. The cat did not demand attention or comfort him in obvious ways. He simply stayed. Elias closed his eyes and let the feeling come. The fear, the exhaustion, the frustration of never feeling quite at home in his own life. His chest tightened, then slowly eased, as though something inside him had finally been acknowledged. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," Elias whispered into the dimness. "I never have." The cat lifted his head and looked at him, silver blue eyes reflecting the low light. There was no judgment there, no impatience, only quiet understanding, steady as time itself. Later, Elias stepped out onto the rooftop of the building. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. The city stretched out before him, lights scattered like distant stars. He leaned against the railing, the cat seated firmly at his side, both of them facing the open sky. Elias realized then that the burden he carried was not failure, but fear of choosing. Fear of stepping fully into a life that asked him to be present, to care, to remain open even when it hurt. And yet, standing there, with the cat beside him, the fear felt smaller. For the first time, Elias did not feel alone with it. The cat remained still, watching the horizon, as if reminding him that fear had walked beside him through many lives and had never been stronger than his quiet willingness to face it. The understanding did not arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, like dawn spreading across a quiet sky. That night, Elias dreamed again. He stood in a wide, open space where time seemed to rest. There were no walls, no ground beneath his feet, only a gentle glow that shifted between warm gold and cool silver. The air felt familiar, welcoming. Ahead of him, figures began to take shape. At first, Elias thought he was looking into mirrors. Men stood before him, young and old, weary and hopeful, each carrying the same eyes, the same dark hair, the same quiet uncertainty etched into their faces. Some wore clothing from distant eras. Others looked almost like reflections of the man Elias was now. All of them were him, and moving calmly among them was the silver-grey cat, unchanged, untouched by time. The cat walked past one version of Elias kneeling in exhaustion, then another standing at the edge of a great city, then another turning away from a path that glowed faintly ahead. In every moment, the cat stayed close, guiding, waiting, watching. Elias felt his breath catch as the truth settled gently into place. He had lived before, not once, not twice, but many times, each life carrying the same quiet pull towards something unfinished, each ending just shy of a choice that mattered. And through all of it, the cat had returned again and again, living countless lives of his own, bound to Elias by something deeper than memory. "You've been bringing me back," Elias said softly. The cat stopped in front of him and looked up. His silver blue eyes held no sorrow, only patience. In that gaze, Elias understood everything the cat had never said. This was not punishment. It was devotion. The cat had chosen this path willingly, giving life after life so that Elias might one day be ready. The figures around them began to fade, their outlines dissolving into light, leaving only Elias and the cat standing together. Elias knelt, placing his hand against the ground, feeling steady and real in a way he never had before. "I always felt like I was late," Elias whispered, "like I'd missed something." The cat stepped forward and pressed gently against his hand, warm and solid. Elias understood then that he had never been late. He had been learning. And now, at last, he was close to the moment that all those lives had been moving toward. The moment when guidance would no longer be enough, and the choice would have to be his. When Elias woke, the room was quiet and still. The cat sat beside him, just as always. But something inside Elias had shifted. The weight he carried was no longer confusion. It was recognition. And with it came a calm certainty that this life was different from the ones before. The morning unfolded beneath a sky washed pale with early light. Elias followed the cat beyond the edges of the city, along a quiet path that climbed gently upward. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of grass and distant earth. Each step felt deliberate, unhurried, as though the path itself had been waiting. They reached the hill just as the sun began to rise. Elias stood still at the crest, the world stretching wide before him. Fields rolled outward in soft shades of green and gold, and the horizon glowed with the promise of a new day. The silver-grey cat sat beside him, facing the same direction, calm and steady as ever. For a long moment, Elias said nothing. He felt the pull of memory settle within him, not as images or scenes, but as understanding. He saw how, in life after life, he had waited for something larger, something clearer. He had searched for signs of greatness, for certainty, for permission to begin. And each time, the waiting had cost him the very thing he sought. His destiny, he realized, had never been hidden. It was simple: to stay, to choose kindness, even when retreat felt easier, to remain open, present, and connected in a world that often asked him to withdraw. Elias inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle gently rather than press down. This was not a dramatic turning point. There was no thunder, no voice from the sky, just a quiet understanding that this choice, small as it seemed, was the one he had always turned away from. "I'm ready," Elias said softly. The cat turned his head and looked up at him. In his silver blue eyes, Elias saw no triumph, no relief, only calm acceptance, as if this answer had always been known. Elias straightened his posture, feeling something align within him. The fear that had once guided his steps faded into the background, no longer leading, no longer loud. In its place was a quiet resolve, steady and warm. Together, Elias and the cat watched the sun lift fully into the sky, and for the first time across countless lives, Elias did not hesitate. The world softened around Elias, as though the morning light had followed him inward. Sound grew distant, edges blurred, and the hill faded into a quiet glow that felt neither like sleep nor waking. He found himself seated in a gentle stillness, a space without walls, filled with warm light that pulsed slowly, like a steady breath. The silver-grey cat stood before him. His fur glimmered more brightly now, not harsh or dazzling, but clear, as if he were made of moonlight, remembered rather than seen. His silver blue eyes held Elias's gaze with a depth that felt endless, calm, and reassuring. For the first time, the cat spoke. The voice did not echo through the air. It rose softly within Elias, familiar and comforting, like a thought he had always trusted. It carried no urgency, only certainty. He told Elias that the waiting was over, that all the lives before had not been mistakes, but preparation. Each hesitation had taught patience. Each return had shaped understanding. And now, at last, Elias had reached the place where guidance could step aside. "This life is the last," the voice said gently. "Not because you failed before, but because you are ready now." Elias felt no fear at those words. Only a quiet peace spread through him, warm and steady. He understood that the end of the cat's journey did not mean loss. It meant completion. "You won't need me after this," the voice continued. "What you've been searching for has always been within you. I was only here to remind you." Elias looked at the cat, really looked, and felt a deep gratitude rise within him. A gratitude that stretched far beyond this moment, beyond this life. He reached out, placing his hand gently against the cat's chest. The warmth beneath his fingers was real, grounding. "Thank you," Elias said. The cat closed his eyes, leaning into the touch, peaceful and unburdened. In that quiet space, there was no sadness, only fulfillment. The kind that comes when a long journey finally knows its end. Slowly, the light around them began to shift, carrying Elias back toward the world. The cat remained where he was, calm and complete, watching as Elias drifted away, not with longing, but with trust. And when Elias opened his eyes once more, the guidance had already taken root within him, steady and sure, ready to carry him forward on his own. The hill was quiet in the late afternoon, bathed in a soft golden light. The sky stretched wide and calm, clouds drifting slowly, as if they, too, had nowhere else to be. Elias stood where he had been that morning, the grass moving gently around his feet. The silver-grey cat sat beside him. He looked the same as he always had, elegant, composed, eyes clear and luminous. And yet, something about him felt lighter now, as though he were no longer bound by the weight of return. Elias sensed it before he saw it, a subtle thinning at the edges, a warmth gathering around the cat, like the first hint of sunset. Elias knelt slowly, meeting the cat at eye level. There were no words left to say. Everything that mattered had already been shared across time, across lives. Elias reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before resting gently against the cat's fur. It felt warm, solid, familiar. Then, softly, the cat began to fade. His silver-grey form broke into tiny points of light, glowing like drifting embers. The breeze carried them upward, slow and unhurried, as though the world itself was taking care not to rush this final moment. The cat did not pull away. He did not look back. He simply remained calm. Elias felt a swell of emotion rise in his chest. Not grief, not loss, but a deep, quiet gratitude. The kind that settles, rather than overwhelms. The cat had given everything he had, life after life, without hesitation. And now, his journey was complete. As the last light lifted into the sky, the space beside Elias grew still. He stood slowly, the warmth of the moment lingering in his chest. The hill felt unchanged, the sky just as wide. Yet Elias knew something profound had ended, and something else had truly begun. The 1000th life had found its rest. Morning arrived quietly, as it always did. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warming the room in soft layers. Elias opened his eyes and lay still for a moment, listening to the gentle sounds of the city waking beyond the window. There was no weight in his chest now, no restless pull urging him to search for something unnamed. Only a calm awareness, steady and present. The space beside him was empty, and yet Elias did not feel alone. He rose slowly, moving through his apartment with an ease that surprised him. The familiar rooms felt different, as though they had been waiting for him to arrive fully. He paused by the window, watching the light spill across the floor, and noticed a faint shape in the glow, a suggestion of silver, quickly fading. A memory, not a presence. Elias smiled. The days that followed unfolded gently. He spoke more openly with those around him, listened without retreating, and allowed himself to remain where he once would have withdrawn. The choices were small, often unnoticed, but each carried a quiet intention. Each one rooted him more deeply in the life he was living now. There were moments when he felt the old hesitation stir, a familiar echo from lives long past. But it no longer guided him. He breathed, stayed, and chose connection instead. One afternoon, as Elias walked through a sunlit street, he felt a sense of alignment settle within him. Not excitement, not triumph, just peace. The kind that comes from finally standing where you are meant to stand. Above him, the sky was wide and clear. Elias continued forward, carrying the wisdom of 1,000 lives within him, guided now by his own steady heart. And somewhere beyond memory and time, a journey rested, complete, fulfilled, and gently at ease.